Dota 2 has some big updates, and with big updates come really long patch notes. Really long. Dota is a live service game, and almost all live service games get updates. TF2. Doing things like adding new content to the game while also shaking up and adjusting some things. That is what an update is supposed to do. For example, Dota got its 7.40 update rather recently, and it was quite a big one. It gave us a new hero, it shifted the meta by a ton, lots of changes, additions, and reworks and adjustments. It even had a loot box. In other words, lots of new content. And this update better had been full of content considering how long it was between this update and the previous one. Dear God, Valve, it wouldn't kill you to be a little bit faster with these updates. Hear me when I proclaim this. Dota 2 has the most insane, ridiculous, ludicrous, and any other strong adjective you want to slap into that statement, updates in gaming. By me saying this, it is both a statement, but also a question. But I'll get into that later into the video. But as far as Dota 2's updates are concerned, in the 14 years that Dota 2 has existed as a video game, I have to say, both Valve and the Dota 2 balance team have really gone above and beyond. Have there been times that they've been kinda lazy? Yeah, sure. But whenever a big Dota update does come around, holy crap, there is a lot to dissect in those things. Because these updates are quite big, especially in terms of scope, length, size, girth, intensity. So while I can yap about the insanity of Dota 2 updates all day long, if you'll allow me, Internet Wanderer, I think it's better if I just show you the insanity that is Dota 2 updates.
Check it out. Looks like I've got some new stories to tell. Monkey. No one's catching me.
They're in the tree!
Oh my god! My trusty curve blade. I slash those buddies like nobody's business.
Leave me alone!
16 times the detail.
That's quite big.
Jesus Christ!
Yes. That's quite big. I like money to give.
Oh my God!
Oh, fuck yeah! Kill me now!
Frowny face.
I'm under attack.
That's a lot of damage.
So if you'll allow me, Internet Wanderer, let's talk about the absolute behemoths that are Dota 2 updates, and why, in my opinion, no other video game's updates can compare. Special shout out to that 3K guy for suggesting this video idea live on stream, which, by the way, you guys should watch. I stream quite often, we have quite a bit of fun over there. And an even bigger thank you to all of the wonderful Dota 2 content creators who graciously agreed to feature in my video. All of these guys make amazing content, and you should absolutely check them out. Links to their channels down below. Thanks again, do the YouTube things, back on topic. Before we begin talking about Dota 2's insane update patches, there's a few disclaimers I want to say before getting into this video. I do play other competitive video games. However, I mostly don't really take them seriously. Refer to this video for more info. I'll read their patch notes every now and then, but for the most part, I'm never really wowed by them. So while this video is gonna be me talking about Dota 2's insane updates and me comparing that to other games, please let me know if I am misrepresenting any of these other games and how they approach their updates. I'll try my best to know the full context of these other games whenever their updates come around, but again, since my playtime in these other games isn't to the level of Dota, I'm probably gonna get some things wrong. Because another reason that I'm also making this video is because I am genuinely curious if there are other games out there that have the same level of absurd updates like Dota 2, whether they be competitive esports games or even single-player games like RPGs. Please let me know if any other games can approach Dota in terms of just the sheer absurdity that are their updates. To help me frame this video, I want to present two principles when it comes to how developers update their live service games: update frequency and the concept of loose versus tight game balance. I actually talked about this concept in an older video before, and since I'm a lazy bastard, I'm just gonna have my old self describe it to you right now. It's a specific way on how games can categorize their way of balance. That is, if a game's balance is tight or loose. Don't laugh. Do you have any idea how much willpower it took me not to make a your mom joke here, be grateful. Everything that I'm showing here on screen is a massive oversimplification, and all games have both elements to some degree, but always favoring one side over the other. So I hope you kind of get the gist of what I'm trying to say here. When I was trying to look up more information about these terms, it turns out that categorizing games as tight or loose is more common when it comes to fighting games. Let's get this out of the way right now. Dota is a game that gets very infrequent updates. However, it has very loose balance. In my opinion, no other competitive video game is as loose as Dota when it comes to their game balance.
Oh, you can't move, boy.
Dota has this luxury of being able to throw around insane number changes to its gameplay mechanics while still maintaining some semblance of balance. Why do you think the +1 base armor comic became as viral as it did? Sure, +1 armor might seem like nothing, but if we're being completely honest, any hero getting +1 starting armor is a huge deal. And the fact that Dota can consistently do this in every patch just goes to show that it has a pretty loose game design. After all, Dota is a MOBA, and MOBA players love numbers and words. Allegedly, assuming you can read. I'm a position 3 player, so I can't.
Fuck shit, that's the old game.
I mean, he dies, so... They snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
So, let's talk about Dota and its updates. Keep in mind, this video will be split into 3 parts. The prologue, which you just finished, congratulations on passing it without needing Subway Surfers on the side. Part 2, which is a simplified history of Dota's recent patches. And Part 3, where I talk about Dota's updates in comparison to other games. But for now, let's get into Part 2, Dota 2's patches. Again, it's not going to be a full history. I'm gonna be jumping around from topic to topic, patch to patch for the sake of time. Had I decided to talk about each and every single patch, this video will probably be like 1 trillion hours long, and neither of us want that. So do me a favor, and after you watch this video, queue up one of my YouTube playlists on my channel, put everything on loop, on 20 separate tabs, on 4 different browsers. My future ad revenue says thank you. This part of the video is also where all those content creators I spoke about are going to appear. I asked most of them 2 simple questions. What was the most impactful Dota 2 update? And what was your personal favorite Dota 2 update? I'll showcase their respective segments and answers when the time comes. Let's get our bearings as to what constitutes a quote-unquote normal Dota patch. And for that, I have the perfect example. 6.86. This was considered a big update for classic Dota 2, released, Jesus Christ, 10 years ago? My god. It added a new hero to Dota 2, Arc Warden, this fishbowl head who is single-handedly responsible for the entire Dota 2 account buying market. This update also implemented a lot of hero reworks. Riki, Death Prophet, Doom, Lone Druid, Faceless Void. More or less, these reworks are kinda responsible for the heroes that we know them as today. It also added a new rune for mid laners to fight over, and of course, lots and lots of number changes and adjustments. This was a substantial Dota 2 update, bigger than average. And if you don't mind me glazing Dota 2, like I've never done that before, I am of the opinion that this update is substantially bigger compared to other live service games. Jumping a little forward, we have 6.88. This was the last update for classic Dota 2. And if I'm being completely honest, it's rather small compared to other major Dota 2 updates. It still has number changements, adjustments, and new additions, but overall not that big. But we all know it's not about the size of the update, it's how you use it. Mandatory your mom joke. Putting aside my constant need to add humor in my videos, sometimes an understated patch can still have massive ramifications for the game of Dota. And that is why 6.88, and more specifically 6.88b, is Dota 2 PowerPoints' personal favorite update. Why is that the case? Well, I think it's better if you hear it from the PowerPoints master himself. Take it away.
6.88, specifically the B patch, remains one of my all-time favorite times in Dota history. The pup meta was really clean, not that much cheese, but when it was picked, it felt really meaningful. Like, you saw Meepo picked, and it wasn't like, oh, okay, we're gonna lose. No, it was like you lock in. Like, alright, dude, let's see what you can do. A lot of the heroes that were really hard to balance, like PL, Dusa, Earth Spirit, all of them were pickable, but they all needed the right game. And it created this meta that felt so personal to you. It was like it changed every time you hit the play button. The big thing though was that year's TI. So TI 6, only 6 heroes never got picked or banned. I'm 99% sure that's the lowest ever. And the heroes that were picked a bunch were fun heroes to watch. So you had Murano with fat arrows, Bat Rider abducting people, big steppies from ET. It was fun. Plus you had Wings, which I still think beats OG in my mind as a Cinderella story for TI. And they were picking Pudge techies in grand finals. Like, what more could you ask for? Like, seriously, what's better than that?
I should probably explain what exactly ladder patches are. While Dota could be described as feast or famine when it comes to their updates, given the fact that we only get like 2 big updates a year, if we're lucky, we do get ladder patches shortly after each big update. These are smaller patches that usually do things like fixing bugs, buff things that need buffing, nerf things that need nerfing, etc, etc. In other words, these ladder patches are just here to adjust things that need adjusting. If you take a look at Dota 2's patch history, it is absolutely filled with ladder patches. And don't get it twisted, these ladder patches can be pretty damn big as well. Case in point, in the latest update, 7.40, somebody in the Dota team decided that Tidehunter needed to become a raid boss. And a raid boss he became, with some unintended side effects.
Structures have been snow fortified. Radiant
This lasted a grand total of like 3 days, 4 days or something like that. He was nerfed shortly thereafter in 7.40b. Rip bozo. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I just wanted to showcase a ladder patch in action. Trust me, this video is already going to be messy, so let's just get back to talking about these patches in chronological order. Most long-running live service games have big updates, but most have that one special update. Not just a big update, the big update. And for Dota, that was 7.00, the new journey update. The definitive big Dota update, because it revamped everything. It overhauled so much. The biggest selling point being the talent tree system, allowing heroes to choose certain upgrades at certain points in the game. This was an era of spell modifiers, stats, attributes, a time of respawn and gold per minute talents. It was really funny that at level 10, Undying picks that level 10 talent, meaning he could die and revive in like less than 10 seconds. I'm convinced that this was the inspiration for Undying's current innate. Most of the initial talents that were implemented in this update were rather bland, however, quite a few of them were also just like really wacky. It was the Wild West of any and all game mechanics that the Dota team could think up of. Put it simply, it was a messy time, but it laid the groundwork for one of Dota's most unique hero-defining mechanics, the talent tree. I want you to really think about this for a second. Right now, of all 127 heroes that Dota has, all of them have 8 unique character upgrades. The fate of your game could rest on you and your teammates getting that level 20 or 25 talent power spike. Doing some quick maths, that is 1,016 talents to choose from. Sure, some of the lower level ones are not impactful, but still, 1,000 new things to keep track of. Most other games build upon their game mechanics linearly. Dota says fuck that and builds its game's mechanics exponentially. And talent trees was that first step towards that exponential growth. Well, I guess technically second if you count Aghanim Scepter. Again, shameless plug. But outside of the talent tree, another great part about this update was the new HUD or UI. Much cleaner and more appealing compared to the old heads-up display. And of course, who could forget the poster boy for the update? Monkey King Sun Wukong, the first true Dota 2 hero. All other heroes were originally ported from Dota 1, and all of the original Dota 1 heroes were designed within the constraints of the Warcraft 3 engine. And here comes Monkey King, the brand new hero with super unique mechanics like being able to mimic terrain, jumping on trees. When I saw the trailer, everyone thought that he was going to be a Phantom Lancer clone, but no, he makes his own personalized Fight Club circle to beat down anybody unfortunate enough to get stuck in it. And as a quick side note, Monkey King exists in other MOBAs, or at least, something similar to that effect. I'm obviously biased, but Dota 2's Sun Wukong does the best job of embodying the Monkey King. Yeah, I know, Dota, who lets the monkey go monkey mode.
time to go monkey mode.
And that's also not mentioning the slew of gameplay changes and adjustments that this patch also implemented. All of these things combined is the reason that 7.00, at least to me, is the biggest and most impactful Dota 2 update has had in its history. It was so huge that Valve decided to skip 12 game versions just to arrive at 7.00. A bit of a side tangent, but we were able to get a recording of people's reaction to Valve teasing us with 7.00. And if nothing else, this teaser trailer is also a good way to illustrate just how far Dota has come up until that point. And on a personal note, this clip is just so iconic, man. It's just peak hype, honestly. It's a bit long, but I just want you to watch it. Fucking awesome, man. But with that being said, even though it is considered the definitive big update, ever since it came out, Valve has been trying to one-up themselves. And depending on who you are, you might even say they've succeeded. But I'll talk about those updates when they come. After 7.00, we still got a few smaller scale, albeit still substantial updates. However, for this instance, I want to jump forward to 7.06. To me, this update is most notable because it removed all of those respawn talents. Good fucking riddance. However, in the era of 7.00 updates, this is also a rather understated patch. Bigger than those that came before it, but compared to 7.00, still rather small. But don't judge an update by its cover, because just because something is understated doesn't mean it's not impactful. One thing that all MOBAs have in common is lanes and creeps, or minions, or troopers, or whatever the hell you want to call them. These things are universal, and thus, any patch that makes changes to how these things operate, the creeps, the lanes, the buildings, that update should be in contention for something that is massively impactful to the game itself. And that is exactly what 7.06 did. It also changed how XP of denies work. It also tweaked how creeps spawn in specific waves and how these creep waves behave. It standardized the respawn time for all of the jungle creeps. There's a lot in here that changed the game. And once again, Dota 2 PowerPoints is someone who agrees that this patch did a lot for Dota.
In terms of the biggest impacts on the game, easy answer is 7.00, but let me learn you something here. So 7.06 is when they made a bunch of changes to creep reward and aggro mechanics. Creeps went from 50% XP to 70% when denied, and neutral denies didn't bring it to 0 anymore. So you were guaranteed way more XP in a bad lane. The floor got way higher. Shit lanes were nowhere near as bad. And that increased XP is what made 2-1-2 so much more viable, because you as the 4 weren't stuck doing a little dance just outside of XP range so your 3 could hit 6 at 10 minutes. Like, you could be so much more active in participating in the lane. 7.06 is also when they changed the creep aggro duration to 2.3 seconds, which remains to this day, by the way. And that's when people started getting really good at aggro manipulation, so the floor got even higher from that. Like, in theory, the strategy was nerfed, but players just got so much better that creep aggro in order to get something out of a bad lane was way better. You combine that with the increased deny XP, and the patch was sort of the beginning of the end when it came to tri-laning and roaming and all that. And that makes me sad. We didn't even realize what we were losing. And to be honest, if they ever reverted it, like, there's no way we'd change back. So I think that's where it all traces back to, is 7.06.
Between 7.06 and the next update that I want to talk about, 7.22, there were 4 new heroes added to the game. In reverse chronological order, we got the 47% win rate king himself, Mars, who's been helping me miss spears every single day, all day. Grimstroke, the only hero to date that, as far as I know, was the only one who was shadow dropped in the game with no warning whatsoever.
Ink set.
You got the biggest oversight herself,
Just a wee.
and a French ball creature that somehow has a lower win rate than Mars.
Wait.
Alright, 7.22. This update was unique because it finally gave all heroes Aghanim Scepter upgrades. From the item's inception from 2004 to this patch coming out in 2019. 15 long years, but eventually all heroes finally got upgrades. Dragonite got his Black Dragon form. Monkey King was shitting out little monkey clones. Death Prophet was shitting out little ghost with her spells. Lycan was shitting out wolves to terrorize the lanes. Tiny was shitting out trees to drone strike enemy teams. And Slardar was shitting out a little puddle of water. By this point, all heroes of the game had both talents and now Aghanim Scepter upgrades. That's a lot of new additions. This game is getting fairly complicated. And it doesn't stop there. In the patch immediately after it, 7.23, the Outlanders update. This was a major leap for the 7.00 era of Dota. We got a double hero drop with both Snapfire and Void Spirit. One of the biggest quality of life features in the fact that all players finally got their own dedicated donkey.
We need a courier.
I got it. One of you is going to be the shunned non-flying courier, so sorry about that.
And not just that, observer wards are now free. Imagine going back in time and telling support players that they didn't have to give like half of their income just so they can buy donkeys and wards. We really have come a long way. This update also increased the level cap to 30, allowing characters to fully select everything in their talent trees. This update removed side shops, but it also added outposts, meaning more map objectives and more places for players to TP to so that way you can fight more. And in terms of gameplay, the biggest thing that this thing did was adding the neutral items. This was a massive shakeup to the meta and just overall game of Dota 2. The fact that players can roam around the jungle, killing creeps, and these creeps would drop extremely powerful items at certain points in the game was just such a novel concept. So by this point, you had talents to keep track of, Aghanim Scepter upgrades to keep track of, and now Dota has effectively doubled the amount of items in your game. That's actually not true. There wasn't that many neutral items, but that doesn't fit the narrative of my story, so shut up. Lots of mechanics to handle and memorize, and Valve just keeps adding more and more. And somehow, these crazy Dota 2 players, the wonderful snowflakes that they are, just absorb all of this knowledge. There might have been some people complaining about mechanic bloat, but honestly, I think most Dota players are just happy to get new mechanics. And as of right now, neutral items do seem like they're here to stay, with old ones and new ones being cycled out every patch or so. You would think that the quality of life upgrades would placate these extremely needy carry players.
No fighting. No fucking fighting. No fighting. No fucking fighting!
But all that vitriol went from carries demanding the supports by a courier. Instead, it went to the carries demanding you for the royal jelly charge. Good times. Jumping forward a bit, we now arrive at 7.28. This patch added Hoodwhack, the biggest piece of furry bait this side of New Zealand. But that's not what I want to talk about. The notable thing that this patch did was adding Aghanim's shards to the game, doubling the amount of brain power required in order to remember what all of these Aghanim Scepter upgrades do. Again, I won't go into detail because I already made a dedicated video about Aghanim Scepter upgrades, but long story short, Valve already knew that Aghanim Scepter was the most unique item in all MOBAs and said,
I'll fucking do it again.
So congratulations, more stuff to memorize. And guess what? Almost all Dota players were happy with this change. I can't wait for Valve to add a third Ags upgrade mechanic in the next 3 to 5 years. Outside of shards, this was also the patch that gave Mars his iconic Aghanim Scepter upgrade. Yeah, please change it, Valve. It's been 5 years. Give my boy something else, please. Jumping forward to one of the contenders for the biggest Dota 2 patch, that being 7.33, the New Frontiers update. True to the name and cinematic, this update made the Dota 2 map 40% bigger. And because of this increase, that meant many new objectives and things to do. including a new mini-boss, which as far as I know, I think is actually the first time that Dota has ever added a new mini-boss other than Roshan. They also added these twin gates acting as built-in portals on the map, Valve somehow ripping themselves off twice with both Underlord Ult and the Portal games. Good job, Gaben. They added these capturable static team wards called the Watchers, a ton of new jungle camps for your carry to AFK farm in. They also added these Lotus pools in the lanes. Valve wanted to be funny because somehow adding a healing consumable in the lane actually equated to more people ripping each other apart and dying just fighting over a piece of fruit. All these new map objectives ensured that there would be more fights happening at any given moment. You would think that having a bigger map meant there's more places to hide and farm, but no. Bigger map equals more objectives equals more fights equals more action. This is such an unintuitive way to approach game balance, but I kinda love it. A bigger map just means a bigger playground for people to kill each other in. This update also added universal heroes who benefited from all of the stats that they gained, and it's rather funny because most longtime players have come to associate certain heroes with certain attribute types. Because in my mind, I still view Bane as an intelligence hero, Abaddon as a strength hero. But the implementation of this brand new class or type of hero, at least to me, it felt pretty seamless. Sure, there were some tweaks every now and then, and some of these heroes were eventually reverted back into their original attribute type, whereas other heroes got added into Universal, but for the most part, I love the addition of Universal heroes. This patch also changed how BKB worked, arguably the most important item in Dota, that a significant amount of the game is balanced around, and Valve just says, huh, get reworked, nerd. The New Frontiers update is truly a contender for one of the most substantial and just biggest Dota 2 updates that it's ever had. And it's not just me. ZZ also shares this opinion.
I think the New Frontiers update was probably the most impactful Dota patch. The bigger map just made it so there were so many different ways to play the game and different playstyles, and just really changed, I think, how Dota is played in pubs and also in professional play. There were also a lot of really important map changes, like Roche being in the corners of the map. We got twin gates, which again really just changed how people play around the map. We got Lotus pools, which added a whole new importance to the laning phase, and on top of all the other things you have to keep track of and take into account in the laning phase, this was just another little side objective that felt really fresh and really fun. The Tormentors, a completely new objective on the map that, teams had to figure out how to best use and play around. We got Watchers, we got the Wisdom runes, we got Shield runes. I mean, there were so many different map changes. I mean, any map changes alone I think are super important for any update, but the fact that there were so many in this one, increasing the size and also adding so many different side objectives, it just really changed the game and how people play it. And they introduced some updates to the ranking system, even introducing immortal matchmaking, which nowadays seems kind of like a joke and probably needs some major tweaks to it, but still the fact that they were even giving this stuff any attention and even introducing the immortal matchmaking was really exciting. And with all of that, it will be no surprise that this was my personal favorite patch, because I'm a big fan of map changes. I'm a huge nerd when it comes to warding, so this was a very, very special treat. And on top of that, just kind of like the whole general play style thing and just watching how teams play and play around the map and play around each other and all these different aspects related to the map and objectives on it, this update was filled with that. So I had a bunch of fun learning all the different strategies and techniques and different things that people were doing.
7.34 was actually a modest patch, comparatively speaking. The only notable thing about it was that Valve teased its release via emojis. Personally, I'm a fan. We should do this for all Dota patches moving forward. Who signed off on this? Was it you, Slacks and Casey? This is your fault, isn't it?
Hey, which one of you goons wants to have a meeting at 6:30 in the morning? Of course. They're firing us.
Jumping forward to 7.36, which is the Facet and Innate update. And I'll just tell you right now, this patch is the biggest contender for the biggest Dota 2 patch other than 7.00. And since Valve seems to be on a quest to make sure that Dota 2 has the highest word count compared to all other competitive live service games when it comes to their updates, they decided to add the Facet system to Dota 2. Put it simply, think of Facets kind of like a built-in TF2 subclass, except it's for all the heroes of Dota, all 127 of them. Take Techies for example. His first facet turns him into Sniper, his second facet turns him into Demo Man, and his third facet turns him into a Nested Engineer. It doesn't actually matter which facet you pick because all allied Techies are actually spies for the enemy team. And another major change that was brought about by this facet system is the complete alteration of how Dragonite works. Instead of his dragon types changing as you level up, now you pick which RGB setting you want your lizard to be at the start of the game, giving Dragonite 3 distinct playstyles instead of the one and done style that he was before. Technically, these changes were for the better, but I don't like it, and thus I never ever want to play Dragonite ever again. Rest in peace, my old spammed hero. Morphle has the ability to choose if he wants to become an agility hero or a mistake. I hear that time zone facet is actually pretty strong. You should definitely pick it. I'm joking. Because no matter how much I make fun of time zone, at the very least, it isn't reverse polarity. What the fuck was Valve thinking with that one?
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
7.36 is my personal favorite patch. I won't go into that much detail since I already made a dedicated video about this topic, which was made obsolete the week after it came out because of the new update. Thanks, Valve. But essentially, it took the balls to the wall approach that 7.00 did, by throwing around all sorts of numbers and mechanics, and they just did that again. But instead of talents doing God knows what, we got facets doing God knows what. It really does take a certain level of crazy for a developer to have a game which already has hundreds of characters and just say, fuck it, let's make it even more complicated. Because by this point, heroes all had Aghanim Scepter upgrades, and then they got unique talents, unique shards, and now unique innate abilities and facets, aka subclasses. This type of craziness is only something that Valve and the Dota team would really do. And like I said, this patch is my favorite. But it's not just me, it's also another person's favorite. And I think I'll let Split Dip explain why.
For my favorite update, it is without a doubt the Facet update. The Facets basically enabled the kind of content that I put on my YouTube channel. They let you play heroes in ways people had completely written off. A great example is Viper. For a long time, people thought this hero was trash, like really low tiers on tier lists. Fast forward to today, Topson plays it, pros look at it, everyone copies it. Suddenly it's the strongest thing in Dota. So I think Facets are so interesting, and there's probably so many hidden facets that people aren't putting enough respect on.
After the Facet update, I won't lie to you, the next two updates haven't been to the same level, but then again, they are still massive in their own right. 7.36 was the Wandering Waters update. True to the name, it massively expanded the pathways all around the map. There's now a lot of water around the map. Big buff for Slardar, who likes being in those stupid ass puddles. Roshan now walks along the river every time it goes from day to night, flinging people out of his way.
Let me tell you something.
But for my money, the best thing about this update was the fact that they changed how neutral items were crafted. Because they use this Madstone system, players can now choose what neutral item they get and what stats come with them. You see, the problem with old neutral items was that whatever stats that they came with was fixed, and sometimes those stats were just things you really didn't want.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
So being able to choose the stats that come with your neutral items was a huge boon. And true to the name, because there's now a bunch of water on the map, they added these little frog boys to the map, which actually served as a hint to the brand new Dota 2 hero which we were gonna get shortly thereafter. I like how I say shortly thereafter, but it was like multiple years between Wandering Waters and the current patch. Thanks, Valve. Before we move on, here's a brief recap of all the major stuff that was added via these gameplay updates. As you can see, it's tons of new mechanics, layering one on top of the other. Most other games expand their mechanics linearly. Dota does it exponentially. In fact, if you chart Dota's growth in terms of how many new mechanics get added over time, that graph would probably look like a hockey stick. There's a reason why videos like Purge's patch reviews go on for hours. Because every Dota update is massive, even the relatively smaller ones. So in the spirit of Purge, I wanted to crunch some numbers as well. I'm probably gonna get some of this stuff wrong, so feel free to make fun of me in the comments. Here's a tally of all the new mechanics that was added into Dota ever since 7.00. Right now, we have 127 heroes. This equates to us having 1,024 talents, 258 Aghanims upgrades, 358 neutral item combinations, 127 innates, and roughly 254 facets. Keep in mind, this is just the new stuff. This isn't mentioning the thousands of game mechanics that Dota has had years before this, like hundreds upon hundreds of spells, hundreds of gameplay mechanics, engine quirks, etc, etc, etc. In other words, Dota already had countless mechanics, and Valve and the Dota team is not afraid to keep adding more and more. And what's even more surprising is that the Dota 2 player base seems to be receptive to this type of thing. We seem to be gluttons for just more and more mechanics. And while the next couple updates that I'm about to discuss weren't to the level of these previous major updates, I have no doubt in my mind that future Dota updates are going to be insane. And I, for one, cannot wait for what those updates might be. But for the time being, let's talk about what we have right now, which is 7.40, the Largo update. Easily the most unique and fun hero added in like the last 5 years, if I'm being completely honest. Mechanically and thematically, he's just such a joy to see, you know? A bard frog? Come on, man. How does that not put a smile on your face? I don't know about you guys, but Sona from League of Legends? Eat your mute heart out. And personally, even though that I love this update, it does kinda feel somewhat unfinished, primarily due to the fact that some heroes had facets removed in this update. I won't go into too much detail because, you know, sounding like a broken record over here. I already made a video talking about this, but shameless plug, don't want to watch. Facets were introduced as an all-encompassing fundamental mechanic to the game. And while a lot of heroes did get reworked in this patch, big and small, I just find it funny that a fundamental system like the facet system was just straight up removed for some of these heroes who got some changes. Personally speaking, because Trin Protector was the recipient of the biggest overhaul in this entire patch, they should have just made it into a separate facet. Like one facet was the old original Trint and the other one was the new one. I don't know, just spitballing ideas here. Don't get me wrong, I'm still happy with how this update came about. I just feel like its implementation was a little messier than I would have liked. But then again, Largo is just such a ray of sunshine that I don't care if the patch was a little messy. And at the time of this recording, assuming I don't get delayed for another month, 7.40b is the latest update currently, with another letter patch probably coming sometime soon. And I'm not the only person who thinks that 7.40 is cool, but flawed. Small heads up, when I went around asking different content creators to feature in this video, I wanted to ask someone who was unfamiliar with Dota about their thoughts about this new patch. You've probably seen their videos floating around YouTube. I think I'll let them introduce themselves.
If you don't know who I am, and you probably don't, I go by T. Lee on YouTube. I make videos about a lot of random stuff that I find interesting, but recently that's been mostly Dota, which I started playing in August after well over a decade of playing League of Legends. Even though that was about 5 months ago now, 7.4 was my first actual content patch for Dota 2, and to be honest, it wasn't quite what I expected. Even as a relatively new player, I'm well aware of just how game-changing Dota's biggest and best patches can be. So as the months went by and the Dota community got more and more anxious about a patch that was apparently long overdue, I kinda began to assume that Valve had something of that nature in the works. But that's not what 7.4 is. Instead, it reminds me of what League always called a mid-season update. A new character serves as the headliner alongside a few tweaks to the game's core systems and a healthy selection of balance changes to freshen up the meta. It's a tried and true formula across many games, but after that long wait, I was expecting a little more. This isn't just because I was expecting some big game-changing feature, it's also because the actual balance side of the patch feels a little rushed. The removal of several characters' facets without any replacements readily available felt like an especially odd change, and though I have to praise Valve for how quickly they got those letter patches out after the initial patch, the fact that they were so obviously necessary that early on raises a few questions questions about just how long Valve spent finalizing the details of a patch that was in the oven for months. Of course, Largo being in the patch certainly helps, and I think he's a great design. But now that I've had a few weeks to really sit with the patch and see how it actually impacts my games, I've begun to think of 7.4 as a patch that will be defined by whatever comes next. It was by no means bad, but it also wasn't really quite enough. So hopefully Valve has some more stuff on the schedule for the front half of this year. And as a side point, Venomancer probably did deserve a nerf, but if he gets nerfed again within this next calendar year, Mr. Newell and I are gonna have a long chat.
Apologies to the non-Dota players in the audience who I know some of you watch my content. Me spouting on about these update patches and game changes might have gone over your head, but I just kind of want to paint a picture here. Dota is a game that has existed for 20 years, and that is 20 years of lessons learned from game development. However, I must also state that when it comes to developing a game, it can go further than just game mechanics. Because outside of all of these gameplay updates, there are other updates that have massively impacted the way that Dota is played, and these updates didn't even touch anything about the gameplay. I'm talking about bug fix updates. Whenever Valve decides to do a massive ban wave for cheaters, quality of life stuff, the new player experience update, and many, many more. But without a doubt, when it comes to these non-gameplay updates, the biggest and most substantial one has to be when Dota ported itself to the Source 2 engine. But instead of me talking about it, there's someone else far more qualified to talk on this matter. Take it away, Czar Potato.
What is the most impactful patch in Dota 2's history? Surely you don't need to ask. Immediately one might consider all the major balance changes that rewrote what it means to be Dota, from 7.0 and its talent tree and backpack, and the first Dota 2 unique hero, to maybe 7.20, when a third of the roster got new or reworked spells. But I think more than any of those, the small client patches really defined the game. We've had spring cleaning patches that update things like lighting engine and improved player inputs, and among all of those patches, no patch comes even remotely close to the significance of Dota 2 Reborn. Do you still remember the game before Reborn? The client was scuffed, though we look at it with nostalgia in our hearts. The custom games were hacked in, the game ran as a separate entity, and the shop was basically a Steam interface. And then, in just a single patch, not even a string of patches, but just one day, we got Reborn. In an instant, Dota was changed to the form we use even today. The game became integrated into the client. Arcade mode, then known as custom games, became part of the core experience. The Watch tab added live games right into the client. The Armory saw its first version as the cosmetic menu, and the Hero Browser gained the grid layout we use today. There were so many more changes, from client chat getting an overhaul, voice chat getting added to the client and improved, the demo map. Guys, the demo map was added this patch. Tournament replays were added, the first tutorial maps. The success of Dota extended even beyond the client. This single patch included Steam install options for the Hammer level editor so people could make new custom games easier. Dota 2 was added to Source Filmmaker, and where would the community be without some of the greatest hits? And finally, but arguably even more significant than anything I've said so far, Dota 2 became the first game to run on the Source 2 engine. Valve used Dota 2 as a test to see how well the engine would run in the hands of millions of players, and oh boy did it succeed. CSGO, Half-Life Alyx, hell even Steam VR, all followed in the success of Dota 2's use of Source 2. So which patch was the most significant? Surely you don't need to ask.
I am very much inclined to agree with Mr. Potato. A game can only go as far as its client and engine can take it. League of Legends spaghetti code. And by Dota moving to the Source 2 engine, it basically future-proofed it for anything and everything that came thereafter. That being said, and if I may insert one more update as a candidate for the biggest change that Dota has ever had, I have one more thing to say. It might be cheating for me to bring this up, but possibly the biggest update that Dota has ever had and will ever have was the initial jump to Dota 2 itself. Dota 1, or Dota All-Stars, was trapped in the confines of Warcraft 3's old engine and all the other constraints that came with being a mod. Valve was able to secure the rights and finally make Dota into their own game. And before Dota 2 Reborn, when Dota was still under the Source 1 engine, sure, it wasn't perfect. But in comparison to where it originally came from, it was night and day. And the sky was the limit for Dota 2, free to chart its own destiny in whatever way Valve chose for it. All thanks to them freeing Dota of being a mod. So, to end this portion of the video, I'm changing my answer. What was the biggest update to Dota? Well, it was Dota 2. Thank you again to all these wonderful content creators who were so gracious enough for giving their thoughts and featuring in this video. And in the further effort of trying to show off how insane these patch notes can be, I would highly suggest you watch one of Purge's Dota 2 patch breakdown videos. Perfect content to take a nap to. I unironically watch these things the entire way through without sleeping. Yeah, there's a lot of words in here. And once again, the reason that Dota's updates are so long and big is the fact that Dota is a very loose game. Grow the fuck up. Conversely, an example of an extremely tight game would be something like fighting games, where changing the speed of an attack even by 1 frame can be completely game-changing. Allow me to make an analogy to my fellow Tekken players in the audience. Imagine if your character's basic jab was 9 frames instead of 10 frames. It doesn't matter if your character is at the bottom of the meta tier list, if you change your basic jab into 9 frames instead of 10, you would then become the strongest character in the game. This applies to Tekken and most fighting games because, again, very tight game balance. However, as tight as fighting games might be, in my opinion, the absolute tightest live service game on the market today has to be Counter-Strike. And this will allow me to segue into my first source of comparison for Dota, that being Dota and its Valve siblings Counter-Strike and TF2. For this comparison, I looked at various update pages for both Counter-Strike and TF2. Let's start with Counter-Strike. Now, CS is kinda like chess. It's not really supposed to change. Despite my personal want for the game to change in any way, shape, or form, please buff the M249 for the love of God.
Alright, 16-0 boys, let's do this shit. Bye out. Ah, fuck, I misclicked. James, you fucking imbecile! We go through this every damn time with you!
So, comparing Dota and Counter-Strike's patch notes isn't really a fair comparison. So, by me comparing them side by side like this, my intention is not to showcase that Dota gets a lot of changes whereas Counter-Strike doesn't. Instead, I'm trying to show the difference in their game balance and management philosophy. I really cannot think of any other long-running video game that has had less changes than Counter-Strike. You have newer live service games like Helldivers and hell, why not even Fragpunk? These games are so much newer compared to Counter-Strike, and despite that, these games have probably had more meaningful gameplay changes than Counter-Strike. But again, that's not the point because Counter-Strike isn't supposed to change. To really nail this point home, I took a look at major Counter-Strike updates: Operation Riptide, Vanguard, Broken Fang, Hydra, Shattered Web, and even the Danger Zone update. After taking a look at all of these update pages, the vast majority of content within these updates are either cosmetics, new maps, new game features, quality of life, menu and client additions, in-game quests, skins, cases, cosmetics, more cosmetics, a shit ton of cosmetics, knives, gloves, you get the point. The only gameplay change that I could actually find from these update pages is the occasional weapon price change and, ooh, do my eyes deceive me? Is that an actual number adjustment? Holy shit, that's a rare Pokemon right there. Put it another way, if you were to list all of the number changes Counter-Strike has had in its 20 years of existence into a list, I still think your average Dota 2 patch note would be longer. Did you guys pay attention during English class? Remember learning about past tense words? I hope so, because in the effort of trying to brush up your English skills, I will be emphasizing all of the past tense words in this TF2 segment. TF2 did get actual decent changes. They were not afraid to throw some pretty crazy gameplay updates. When they made Scouts Sandman Ball stun enemies, those were the days. And after taking a look at TF2's various update pages across the years, it's clear that once again, they are nowhere near as long as Dota. But they still got pretty beefy updates. Take Jungle Inferno for example. This was the last update that TF2 has gotten to date. But at the very least, hey, this is an adjustment page, and those are some nice adjustments that they gave to the game. So as a general rule of thumb moving forward in this video, FPS games and just shooter games in general don't get anywhere near as much number changes as compared to MOBAs, because just like fighting games, shooter games have to be tighter by design. In my opinion though, I would still say that shooter games are looser than fighting games, though not as much as MOBAs. I'm probably going to put some graphic here on screen for a visual reference. I can't see it right now because I haven't made it when I was recording this video. Future Argo, I hope you do a good job at making that graphic. Tell you what, just because I want to spite my future self, can you make the graphic pink? Thanks. Naturally, comparing Dota to genres that aren't necessarily close to it isn't exactly fair. So how about we compare it to something that is in the same genre? That's right, it's not an Argonax video if I don't bring up League of Legends like the salty Valve fanboy suffering from an inferiority complex that I am. League of Legends gets fairly frequent updates. However, the overall scope of their updates is still smaller relative to Dota. That being said, Riot Games isn't exactly strangers to massive game overhauling changes. In fact, some of these overhauls and revisions were so all-encompassing, so daring, so avant-garde that they reverted them later on because they admitted that they were mistakes. Well played, billion-dollar indie company.
We are cutting Otacon out of the game. That includes Blood Roses and the pedals with them.
And while I do play League of Legends, I, of course, never really paid much attention to their updates, so I asked my audience for their opinions as to what the biggest League of Legends updates were. And from what they've told me, they are the Rune Reforged update, the Mythic Items update, the 2015 map rework, and the Dragon Souls update. And from my gathering here, in terms of sheer gameplay and from a numbers impact, the Rune update might be the most substantial. Again, these are just the opinions of those that I have asked in my Discord. Please feel free to inform me down in the comments if I got any of that wrong. And if I can set aside my bias for a second, obviously when comparing overhauls from League of Legends to Dota, their changes aren't as fundamentally game-altering compared to Dota, but I still have to give praise where praise is due in the fact that Riot isn't afraid to try new things. And after all, League of Legends is still a MOBA, and being a MOBA affords them quite a bit of leniency when it comes to their video game design. So naturally, they are a loose game. Not as loose as Dota, but compared to everything else, pretty damn loose. Combined with the fact that League of Legends is the biggest breadwinner for Riot Games, so naturally, it has to get a ton of updates. Riot likes to curtail the meta in a very specific way. They want to dictate how the game is played, whereas Valve and Dota 2, they instead pump out an update and let the players decide how the meta is made. Now, of course, I'm biased, and I would naturally say that I vastly prefer Valve's method of doing it, letting the players decide the meta for themselves instead of having it be dictated by the game company. But again, that's just my bias and preference talking. And speaking of being a biased Dota 2 fanboy, I have one more observation when it comes to League of Legends and their updates. Usually whenever a big update comes around, they do this thing where they revamp or overhaul a champion. It's called a VGU, or Visual Gameplay Update. At its simplest, it's just Riot giving a facelift to an old-looking champion. At its most drastic, they delete an old character and remake them from scratch. Ideally, a champion should still more or less be played the same, or at the very least fit the same niche and gameplay style. And some VGUs are usually very good. Teemo, Dr. Mundo, Warwick come to mind. But some VGUs basically Thanos snap away an original champion and replace them with an imposter, and the only thing that they have in common is that they share the same name. I have had longtime League of Legends players tell me that they dropped the game because their old mains got reworked for the worst. Old Galio players, Akali players, Skarner, Mordekaiser, Aatrox, Ryze, the reworked Magnet himself. Many players who mained the old versions of these champions, whenever the new one came around, they barely resemble their old counterparts. And don't get me wrong, VGUs can be awesome. In fact, my top 3 favorite League of Legends champions, Swain, Mordekaiser, and Skinny Mars, all got VGUs that made them insanely fun to play. And of course, what makes a good or bad VGU is a matter of opinion. I've heard some people love the new Skarner, but I've also heard quite a few people absolutely hate it. So it's kind of a weird feeling whenever you play an older champion in League of Legends, because any day, Daddy Riot might just bring your favorite champion out back and,
It just works.
Riot even had the gall to take an old champion, Aatrox, A character who has been reworked many times. They took his old version, old Aatrox, and made him into a new champion, Zahen. I don't know if that's fucking allowed. That's like character design necromancy. Now, don't get me wrong. Dota is no stranger to overhauling and reworking heroes. But almost never does a Dota 2 hero rework dismantle an old hero and replace them with something new. When they shuffled around Brewmother's spells, it doesn't matter, she still kinda plays the same. Her placement in the game is still the same. When Phantom Lancer got Doppelwalk replaced for Doppelganger, it doesn't matter, he's still the same hero that you cannot see what's happening on the screen. Essentially, Dota heroes get reworked in such a way that it doesn't destroy the spirit or their core. The only two possible exceptions to this statement is Techies and Clinks. Old Techies is truly the only hero that you can say got deleted and completely replaced by another hero who just so happened to share the same name as him. And this might be a hard pill to swallow because as much fun as old Techies was, his design was unsustainable for a long-term competitive game like Dota 2. That being said, Valve, please bring him back.
Trap is set. Oh my god!
Release the Kraken!
Make old Techies into a Facet or something, I don't care, please bring it back. Clinks, on the other hand, has had so many goddamn overhauls and remixes to his kits. I actually think he's been reworked 6 or 7 times, but at the very least, you can still say that the core of the hero has remained the same, that being of high mobility physical burst damage. So I guess in a way that's something he and Rise have in common then. Although recently, Treant Protector did get a reworked that turned him into less of a support and more of a core position 3. But that rework is still pretty fresh, so I'll wait for more time to pass before I judge it appropriately. Tinker's rework and Dazzle rework are special mentions as well. Old Tinker is dead. It should fucking stay that way. Now it's time for my ignorance to shine bright. RTS games and MOBAs are deeply intertwined. Shameless plug. Needless to say, there are many comparisons to be made when it comes to these two game genres. I've spoken to quite a few RTS players who just so happen to play Dota as well, and from what they've told me, competitive RTS games like Warcraft 3 and StarCraft could rival Dota in terms of the amount of number changes and adjustments that they tend to make. However, they did say that these RTS games cannot compete with how often and how drastically Dota overhauls itself. One of them even made this observation. I'll leave it up to you whether or not they're accurate in this assessment. The jump from StarCraft 2, Wings of Liberty to Heart of the Swarm isn't as drastic compared to Dota 2's 7.00 update. Even RTS content creators like Grubby agrees that Dota is a more complex game compared to most other RTS games.
Then, Dota 2. I just maxed it out in both. Graphs. You see it right there. 10 out of 10 on depth and complexity, right?
That being said, I'll forego placing RTS games on my little chart here because I deeply respect RTS games. And out of all of the genres that I would be talking about in this video, RTS is the one that I want to misrepresent the least. So I'm gonna leave it up to you guys in the comment section to decide where RTS games like Warcraft 3, StarCraft 1 or 2 would belong on this little graph here. And on the topic of competitive games, why not also include hero shooters? Because after all, hero shooters and MOBAs have a decent amount of overlap. I honestly wouldn't know where to place Overwatch or Marvel Rivals on here. Hell, let's even include Battle Royales like Apex Legends, PUBG, or Fortnite. I don't know where they would belong on this graph. Even non-esports games can get pretty big updates. No Man's Sky, Minecraft, GTA Online, MMOs like World of Warcraft or RuneScape. I've played some of these games, but not all of them. So I'll try to assign a super rough estimate on the games that I have played. However, I am not confident in this placement whatsoever. I'm going to leave out the ones that I haven't played, and again, I'm gonna refer back to you guys. Call to action. Please, dear Internet Wanderer, leave a comment in the comment section down below if If you have played any of these games, where would you place them on here and why? How frequently do they get updates? And is their update philosophy tight or loose? Let me know. Audience engagement. Oh, and as one more quick aside, Valve's other MOBA, Deadlock, actually gets some pretty huge updates as well. But since the game is still in active development and isn't finished yet, I'll refrain from comparing it too much to Dota. If I had to put a rough estimate as to where I'd put it here. It must be stated though, as development of Deadlock continues, it is very clear that Valve is not afraid to layer on more and more mechanics, just like Dota. So in the future, whenever Deadlock actually gets its final release, it actually might end up becoming a much looser game by comparison. But then again, time will tell. Usually when it comes to competitive video games, the esports side is very, very important. That means pro tournaments, pro events, pro games, pro matches, etc. Most other games, whenever a big tournament comes around, they want to make sure that any big gameplay changes happen much earlier, thus giving the pros and the pro teams enough time to acclimate to whatever new gameplay update just happened. Dota, for the most part, mostly follows this rule, except for the poor people over at Dream League, because for them, twice, a major Dota 2 update happened in the middle of their event.
I wanna wish you a merry Dream League. I wanna wish you a merry Dream League. I wanna wish you a merry Dream League from the bottom of our heart.
Imagine yourself as one of the teams playing during this event. You had to learn a brand new game, understand and set its meta, all in a matter of a few hours. And don't get me wrong, this is not a good thing. You should give pro players and pro teams enough time to tinker around whenever a brand new update comes to their game. However, it is very interesting to see pro teams and pro players respond and adapt to a high-pressure environment like a pro tournament, combined with the fact that a brand new gigantic update just happened in the middle of it. If that doesn't show versatility and adaptability, I don't know what does. You hear that? Tekken team, you can release brand new updates during a busy tournament season. Just saying, you lazy bastards. My fellow Dota players, we truly take our game for granted. Because sure, we are used to all of these mechanics, but you have to remember that other games don't have this level of individual character uniqueness. We have 127 heroes now, and all of them have individual unique upgrades via Aghanim's Scepter and Aghanim's Shard. And all of them, ignoring the latest patch at the time of this recording, all heroes have multiple distinct play paths via the Facets system. That's also not mentioning item builds and hero playstyles that further expound the inherent complexity of Dota. You can't ignore the talent tree and its branching upgrades either, and this might just be me talking out of my ass, but Dota truly is a master of balancing what seems to be an unbalanceable game balance? Let's put it like this. Dota is a game of insane complexity, fluidity, and depth. And in my opinion, these three aspects are extremely hard to balance, especially fluidity and depth, because after all, it's kind of hard to make a game that runs smoothly while also being extremely deep. Many games struggle with this type of balance. Shout out to all the great roguelites out there that can manage to do something like this. But for a competitive esports that has so many factors and variables like a MOBA, the fact that Dota can balance fluidity and unbelievable mechanical depth is something that should be applauded. I already made dedicated videos about Aghanim's upgrades and facets, so shameless plug I guess. But I'm saying all of this because I just want to state this again. No other game, to my knowledge, has anything similar to these character-specific mechanics. And again, sounding like a broken record over here, please let me know if I am wrong. Some people did point out in my Aghanim Scepter video that Risk of Rain has something similar, but after doing some research, I've concluded that, well, Risk of Rain doesn't exactly have the same level of depth as Dota, even though they have something similar to Aghanim Scepter. Needless to say, Dota is a really deep game, and the only reason it got this deep is because of 20 years of constant, endless, relentless Dota updates. Thousands upon thousands of words, numbers, and adjustments, just so that this game that we love gets more and more additions to it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. You know, I played Dota 1 back in the day, and Dota 1 had more frequent, albeit smaller updates. You could actually freely browse the Dota versions on my copy of Warcraft 3, which had a ton of versions of Dota All-Star pre-installed. Totally legitimately, of course. Yo ho.
Savvy.
Not gonna lie, whenever me and my brother played LAN, we had no clue what any of these game versions meant. We kinda just randomly picked game versions to play. I've played versions of Dota 1 where Undying was an intelligence hero, where Darkseer's Aghanim Scepter upgrade created allied illusions, where Invoker had like 27 spells or something like that. I've even played The Gambler. Yeah, I'm old. A game can only be as good as the lessons that it learns during its development, and Dota is a very old game. Naturally, it's learned a lot of lessons, and we, the players now in the year of 2026, are just here enjoying all the lessons that Dota has learned in its long, storied life. But then again, I also know that there's quite a few of you who don't actually bother reading patch notes. To quote a comment I saw on my Dota is Gaming's Most Overwhelming video, I don't read patch notes. I feel patch notes. And honestly, despite me talking about how amazing Dota 2's patch notes are and how learning about them and reading about them is kind of important to learning about this game, if you are truly one of those people who could not be bothered to read them, all power to you. Apologies if this video seems really messy and disjointed. Well, that's because it is. Parts of this video was recorded and edited weeks apart. This video was my most ambitious to date. I had to overhaul this video 3 times. At one point, I completely restarted the production of this video from scratch because I wasn't happy with the outcome. But the final cherry on this misery fiesta is that this past week, I have been working from a shitty motel with no Wi-Fi. That's right, I'm recording this audio right now in the middle of my hotel room. My cats are playing in the background. The audio is bad, but at this point, I don't care anymore. The reason I'm here is because my upstairs neighbor left their sink on, causing water damage to my ceiling, thus requiring me to stay away from home while repairs are made. I hope this video does well enough that I can earn enough money so I can move to the apartment above them, and this time it's me leaving the sink on. Domestic threats aside, this video took a lot out of me. It's also for that reason that for the remainder of January, I plan to just focus on streaming. I'm still gonna upload videos every now and then, it's just that I'm gonna put more of my energy onto streaming because, well, I've been having a lot of fun doing it. In fact, if everything goes according to plan, I should be live when this video goes up. Come on by and say hello. I sincerely hope you enjoy the video despite the setbacks, and I just want to thank all the content creators for showing up and featuring in my video once again. I'm gonna go take a nap now. Thanks for watching, Internet Wanderer. Do the YouTube things.